There is not one thing in this world that doesn't relate back to the meaning of the planets, the signs, and this whole cyclic process. Everyone wants to know what the future holds for us. Saturn and Uranus will be aspecting Trump's midheaven. That is a treacherous time period. Does it have to happen? We've got some things coming up in 2025 that will depict some amazing changes, and I'll get to that. And I want to say 2026 is going to be a golden year. Here is what I tell everyone, and I know it works because I live by this. Really and truly, astrology is the tool that depicts our evolution as a humanity, as mankind, as well as individually, because where the planets are moving, these are cycles. And what I like to tell people is truly astrology is the study of cycles. But as the planets evolve, when they go into particular signs or when they go into certain aspects, which means when planets come together, when they form aspects, they really do generate entire generations of people where they are in consciousness. And so that's the whole big picture. But individually, it's like this. Let me give you an example to explain what I'm talking about. The three outer planets are the planets that rule the collective unconscious. So they pretty much where they are in accordance to their signs. And the fact that they move so very slow, they depict entire generations, because an entire generation will have those planetary configurations in their birth chart reflecting who they are. So for example, in the 1960s, Uranus and Pluto were together practically that whole decade. And therefore, that particular conjunction represents rebellion and revolution and change and disruption. And look what happened throughout the 1960s. Now, likewise, to make it more about what you're talking about, guidance for each individual person, you see all those people born in the 60s have those two planets conjunct in their chart. So you see, it's like the mass consciousness of what's going on with those two planets, and particularly even the signs that they're in, will reflect what's going on in the world. But people born with that conjunction, they're revolutionary, they're rebellious, they're the ones that are going to cause the changes that happen. So does that make sense, where it's like a planet, the evolution in the sky as well as in an individual's birth chart? Because when we're talking about an individual, we're talking about their birth chart. And what a birth chart is your map, your personal map of where all the planets are at your day, time, and place of birth. And so therefore we take that map, in other words, it's a freeze frame of where all the planets were when you were born. And then where the planets continue to move relative to where they were when you're born is pretty much how we make our predictions. So that's a very generalized way of looking at it. Does this make sense? What questions do you have about what I just said?
Yeah, so one of the questions that pops up is when you're saying, yeah, like, given where the 60s babies, where where Pluto and Neptune were together, it does open up this question around free will and destiny. How
Yeah.
much of it is free will? How much of it is destiny? Because certain people tuning in, like, are totally, oh, Mercury's going into retrograde, that has an impact on me. But for some people, it's like, hey, like, what's going on all the way out there? How could that possibly have anything going on for me over here? So yeah, what does this tell us about destiny and free
Okay.
will? How do those two things come together, and how do we maximize our free will to shape a life that's aligned to our highest potential?
Okay, now that is the age of all time question, right? Free will versus destiny. And by the way, it's Uranus Pluto, not Neptune Pluto. Completely different energy.
Thank you. Pardon me. Yeah.
And I'll explain that too, because we did have a Neptune Uranus conjunction that happened in the 90s. And that brought about the iPhone, and that brought about all the invention in computers. So always these big trends of the three outer planets create what's going on, for the generations, for the world, the evolution of mankind. But free will and destiny, the planets, as they say in Vedic astrology. So what I do is the astrology from India, which is Vedic, and it takes the sidereal positions, by the way, of the planets. Sidereal means star. And what's happened over a long period of time are the stars are moving. And the Vedic sidereal astrologers take that movement into account. So actually, the signs that you're familiar with in Western tropical are a little bit different. Your signs have changed over time. But going back to the free will versus destiny question, I believe the planets, they're called grahas. Graha means to grasp and take hold of something, right? So the planets influence us. And some people could say they control us. And really, it's very hard to understand how can something out there affect us? But this is a vibration. This is an energy. And you have to know everything here is vibration and energy. So that's what the planets are all about, the vibration, the energy. And this creates the change. But we do have free will. We do have a certain amount of free will. And the way a lot of the gurus, the saints, and by the way, Vedic astrology was handed down by the great seers of India. It is documented in the Vedas, and that's why we call it Vedic astrology, one of the oldest references in the Indian scriptures. They make note of the nakshatras, which are part of the Vedic system of astrology. But going back to this, the great seers and the gurus, they have said, most of them, that destiny, our free will, we have about 25% free will and 75% is destined. So here's my philosophy, that your Vedic chart is everything that you've ever been before. So that means reincarnation. Of course, we believe in reincarnation if we're from India, right? So everything you've been, some accumulation of who you've been is what the planets in your chart are telling you. So you come into this life with unfinished business from all of your past lives. So there's certain issues that you've come here to learn through. And here's another thing. This is so complicated that no human being can really tell you how this works or why it works, because it's beyond our comprehension. But let me just tell you, as being an astrologer for over 40 years, it absolutely works. So here's the thing. If your chart is a sum accumulation of everything you've ever been, and it tells you exactly what you left off unfinished, such as what if you came back and you've got issues with relationships? Your chart will tell you that. So unfinished business, you didn't learn your lesson through relationships. So guess what? You're going to come back with that same issue. But do you have to keep coming back time after time with the same issue? Absolutely not. So here is what the chart tells you. What is the unfinished business? What is your karma? What are you here to do in this lifetime? What are you here to learn? So you don't have to come back and do it all over again. That's the most important thing. And most people go, oh, well, I never want to come back and do that again. I say, well, you better get the lesson. You better learn it, because this is what the chart is saying. So if you say 75% is destined, yes, you planned all this before you came down so you could grow. What it's all about is spiritual growth. We are all here to grow spiritually. That is the purpose. And that's what I see astrology as a tool for self-understanding. How can I change? What does the chart tell me are my issues? And then you know what you have to work on and what you're here to change. So if 25% is free will, total free will, and of course it has to be this way, we're not puppets acting out a script. There's no purpose in that. Everything in life to me has to have purpose, and it does. There is a divine force that runs through everything and runs through astrology. The planets are this force that guide us. And if we're conscious and aware of this, then we can make choices based on what the astrology chart is giving you, your map, in other words, to better guide you, to heal you, and make you the best person you can be, because your chart will tell you what your gifts, what your talents are. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't know. And the chart tells them. And once they follow this path of least resistance, going the path of what the stars are indicating through what they've been before, what their talents are, what they're here to discover and grow through, this makes life so much easier and fulfilling and beautiful. So, astrology is a tool for self betterment, for self improvement, and most of all, guidance. Because let me just say, if everything's cyclic and we have choice, then nothing is going to be where it's perfect all the time. And we all have difficulties. And you know as well as I do, Amrit, that when we go through difficult periods in our life, that's when we grow the most. So you have to have, and when you understand the planets, such as Saturn is the teacher, Saturn is difficulties, and it teaches us through difficulties. It teaches us through learning and experience. Saturn's old age. Don't we become a lot wiser when we get older? Hopefully, right? If we follow what we're supposed to be learning. And Jupiter gives us opportunities. So all the planets represent these specific things throughout our lives. And the whole chart is like the map, because there's something called the houses. There's 12 houses. They're different areas of your life. So as you have certain planets in different houses, this tells me about what you're all about and what you're here to learn. But let me go back to the cycles, the process of cycles. We will have ups and downs. And one thing I know that people really love to know about, and trust me, people usually get a chart reading when they're having problems. Usually, what my teacher used to always say, nobody seeks God after winning the lottery. So, so it's like this, that there are these time periods where we're having great difficulty. That's when they call an astrologer. But the best thing about astrology is I can tell them when it's going to be over. And they love that, because then they know they can get through it. Here is the time when your difficulties will reside and be over with. So that helps. So going back to the original question, free will versus fate and destiny. If we have 25% free will, complete free will, what I do as an astrologer, I look at the whole chart as free will. So, but some things we're here to experience, and they may not be fun, but we have to go through them. But here is the choice. Are you going to choose to go this route or that route when you come to a crossroads in life? And you can see what road you're going to take, or you have a choice. And that will change your life. So we do have free will. Don't get me wrong, but here's another thing. No astrologer in the world or psychic will ever be 100% accurate. So, because of free will. But I will say this, they will be 75 to 80% accurate. But what makes it incorrect is some people can change their destiny. But if people are not conscious or aware to make better choices, usually the chart will play out with 100% accuracy. Does that make sense?
It does. It
Where
does.
people can choose, and that's the 25%.
Yeah, we had Christian Sundberg. He had a pre-birth memory, like not near death, but like pre-birth. He remembered a lot of things before. A very interesting individual before coming into this life, and he talked about how it's almost like a tree on its side. Like you're pretty clear on where you're going to go, and then these like opportunities, like it's quantum possibilities, is kind of what he described it as you go down. Like you still have this choice, and then each choice sort of truncates into another choice. But and then you start to think about how everybody's choices impact each other. Anyway, it starts to get really interesting. But one of the questions in there that emerged for me was, we do yeah, you mentioned the past and the future and how, we're looking at it from this lifetime. But then there's also this thing that's happening in terms of past and future, like transcending this lifetime. And also, you mentioned reincarnation in there. One of the things that I think people tuning into this podcast are familiar with to some degree is our soul chose the lessons that it wanted to experience as it came into this lifetime, right? So that's a pretty common, like, spiritual awareness is like, like, so I signed up for a certain amount of lessons in this particular lifetime, my challenges, my strengths, my gifts. But the key thing in there, Touchwood, at this particular juncture in the conversation, I'd like to pick on a little bit is, does our soul potentially also choose the constellation in some way? Because then it's like, this is the right constellation for me to sort of come through. Oh, you're nodding. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. We everything before we come down, we make this choice. And I think we're one with the divine. So therefore, the divine is helping us make these choices. It's not like we're on our own. There is a divine force in everything that we do. And here's what I have to tell everyone: the more you connect with that divine force, the more you will make the right choice. And the more you realize you are that divine source, that is where we become more and more enlightened and evolve on this planet. So everything is in the cyclic process of this spiritual energy, or should I say it's a power, it's an energy, it's a vibration. It is a just frequency, this frequency. That's what I want to say. And it's almost like, I think I'm almost like quoting Nikola Tesla, because he said everything's energy, vibration, and frequency. And it is. And this really does depict astrology. And by the way, some of the greatest scientists had the utmost respect for astrology, including Einstein, because they understand that what it is. It's the energy and how we are all connected to everything in the universe. And that is that one divine spark and spirit, which you could call God or the divine, whatever you want to call it, depending on what religion you're part of. But it's all the same thing. And it is that power of love and connection. And it's beautiful. It's a force. And that's the force we need to connect with. And astrology has definitely taught me that that's what the energy is all about.
Inspired Soul, just taking a quick moment out to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. And to all of you that are considering subscribing to the channel, please do take a moment. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please take a moment, hit that button, hit the bell notification icon. It helps with everything we're doing here, championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the world. I'm super excited to share Joni's 2025 and 2026 predictions with you in today's episode, so stay tuned. That's coming up. Back to today's episode. Can you tell me a little bit more about because most people tuning in when they're listening into astrology, they don't have the level of discernment to Western astrology versus Vedic astrology, which you specialize in. Maybe you can explain, the difference between the two, but also why it was so important for you to follow one path over the other. And not that they're mutually exclusive, but anyway, I'm front loading your answer. Yeah.
No, I'd be glad to explain that, because most people don't even know there's, differences in astrology. And first of all, I started with Western astrology because I started, so long ago. I didn't even know there was Vedic astrology. All I did was study, astrology, and that whatever came about was the Western. But what Vedic is it uses the sidereal system. So it's a system of calculation. There's tropical and sidereal. And tropical is what the Western astrologers use, and it's mainly based on the sun, the cycles of the sun. So the sun will reflect the seasons. So that's why, when you say you're a particular sign, that's where the sun is in that constellation for a month. And every month the sun goes through all 12 constellations or the signs. So, and Vedic does the same thing, but it uses the stars because it uses the sidereal system, and sidereal means star. So what it's based on is more star-based rather than the sun-based. And so since the stars are moving and this wobble of the earth, which causes the precession of the equinoxes, the stars, which are relevant to the beginning part of the zodiac, has been changing over years. So the precessional cycle takes 26,000 years to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So right now, we are actually at the beginning of our zodiac is Pisces, whereas Western astrologers always keep the beginning of the zodiac in Aries, 0 Aries. So consequently, about 2,000 years ago, the Western and the tropical and the sidereal were the same. But because the stars are moving and they move very slowly, like I said, 26,000 years, but over a period of 2,000 years, your sun sign has reverted back almost a full sign. So the whole zodiac has reverted back almost a full sign. So if you say you're an Aries, chances are you might be a Pisces in the Vedic because it's gone backwards in the zodiac. So, but let me just say this, these are the true placements according to astronomy, where the Vedic placements are. Because if you have on your phone, which I love, I have this little tool on my phone that is Skywatch, right? And you put it up and it tells you where, the moon is, what constellation it's in, where all the planets, what constellations. It gives you the sidereal positions because they're the true placements, because the star groupings that constitute the signs have shifted backwards. So that when I discovered that Vedic astrology used the absolute astronomically correct positions, I said, there's got to be some truth to that. I want to learn Vedic astrology, and I made it my mission to do so. Does that make
That's
sense why they're
it.
different?
Yeah, it totally does. And it's interesting to hear that, yeah, based on the sun, it's somewhat more relative and things are sort of getting a little bit out of lockstep when you look at the bigger picture of the GPS coordinates of the stars themselves, where like we can orient ourselves a little bit tighter. And that, yeah, that it's guided by the stars, as well as the sun. Interesting question that popped up for me. I do want to talk about the precession of the equinox, but you mentioned earlier that Saturn was a teacher, or Saturn is the teacher, and Jupiter sort of embodies opportunity. Can we get a quick crash course on maybe like a 1 word or a 2 word sort of synopsis of each of the planets and what they represent for us, at least within our solar system?
Absolutely, yes. So the planets all rule certain things in our life and in our world. And so Saturn is the teacher. Saturn is difficult. It can cause endings. And everything has to come to an end at some point. Just the basics of our world. Yes, things are eternal though, but in this world that we know, things have to come to an end. All good things end. So Saturn is endings, and that can be difficult. Jupiter is expansion, where Saturn is contracting. So they're quite opposite. Mars is energy to the fullest extent. Mars rules sports. Mars rules action, energy, but all at the same time, it rules anger and attacks and war and weapons, but it also rules siblings in Vedic astrology. And I find that to be hilarious because, what do we do with our siblings? It's like competition, right? We
Destined to
want the
be.
attention of our parents. But, everything makes so much sense when you understand it. Venus is love. Venus is marriage. And in a man's chart in Vedic astrology, Venus represents the wife. So in Venus is beauty. Venus is everything with the arts. So that's Venus. Mercury is the mind. Mercury is the thinking mind. Mercury is education, everything to do with communications. So Mercury, when it goes retrograde, which by the way, it's going to go retrograde pretty soon, it affects when a planet does go retrograde. Of course, no planet really is going backwards, but from the vantage point of Earth, it looks like it's going backwards. And what that means is everything that these planets rule all of a sudden become prominent and dysfunctional a little bit. So Mercury rules the thinking mind. So when and it rules travel. So when Mercury goes retrograde, you're going to find everyone's travel plans go haywire. There's mechanicals on airplanes. And by the way, I used to be a flight attendant, and I would always tell my flight crews, I'd say, Mercury's going retrograde. Look out, there's going to be all sorts of delays. And they'd look at me and roll their eyes. And then when it started happening, they'd come running back to the back of the plane. Now, what did you say? How long is this delay going to be? So, they rule all these different things. The sun is our life force, but it also rules your father in a chart. The moon rules the emotional body and the mind and consciousness, but it also rules your mother. So all these planets rule specific things, and they have particular energies. And let me think if I left one out. No, and then going beyond, the three outer planets deal with the collective, the unconscious. And therefore, but if you have an outer planet conjunct one of the other planets that are visible to the naked eye, they will influence that planet, to the most extreme degree. So they are so very important. And here I was, a Western astrologer for 20 years, and I made some of my grandest predictions with the outer planets. And then I switched to Vedic, and they say, oh no, we don't use the outer planets. And I say that, I'm sorry, I can't do that. The outer planets work. So I found a way to incorporate them, and it works because they don't necessarily affect us in a personal way unless they conjunct one of your natal planets, the other planets that, anyway, it's kind of complicated, but the outer planets deal with mass consciousness, as I said, the evolution of mankind. And Rahu and Ketu, you probably, if you've listened to any of my videos anywhere, I'm always talking about Rahu and Ketu. These are not planets, but we treat them as planets in Vedic astrology. Let me just say they deal with your destiny. They are so important. And wherever they are in a chart will reflect your future destiny as well as your past, what's occurred. And they are hugely important in a chart. And in the sky, when they come together with the sun and the moon, they cause eclipses. And what I say about eclipses, it's a darkening of the lights, the sun and the moon. What does that do? It always brings out things we don't know about in our personal lives as well as global. So that's my little definition for all the planets.
That is so interesting to feel into. Now, in the precession of, thank you for that, the precession of the
Yeah.
equinox is happening. There's collectively people are aware that we're going from, I think it's Pisces to this age of Aquarius is opening up for us. Now, to sort of
Yeah.
put some context around this, what's happening currently, that sort of step, is the same thing or same magnitude of order of step that sort of happened kind of 2,000 years ago when Jesus Christ came through. Is that right?
Yes, here's the deal with that. These are truly the ages of mankind when you go through the different ages. And people are saying, oh, we're on the verge of the age of Aquarius. Well, 2,000 years ago is when we entered into the age of Pisces. And I find it fascinating that 2,000 years ago was when Jesus came. And what is the symbol for Christianity? The fish. What is the symbol for Pisces? The fish, there, you will find that everything is related. You will find that there is not one thing in this world that doesn't relate back to the meaning of the planets, the signs, and this whole cyclic process. So these cycles of the signs last for about 2,400 years, each one. So we still have about 350 years to go, actually, till we enter into the age of Aquarius. And a lot of people say, oh, we are already entered into it. We actually have not. But there's other ages, such as the Kali Yuga and all the different yugas that we go through as well. And we've just finished the Kali Yuga, which is the most difficult one. And the ones to come are a little bit more enlightened. But you've got to admit, the past 2,000 years, mankind was in a very dark place, the darkest place it could be in, actually. So we are improving and getting better. That's what I can tell you.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Interestingly, what is the shift that the age of Aquarius then implies for us as a collective, in your opinion? Like you said, the fish and the symbology, and like the age of Pisces, probably like those are the symbols. But then in terms of the energetic, what it meant for people over the last 2,000 years versus what you sort of predict the next 2,000 years will embody as a frequency.
Yes. So Pisces, the saying for Pisces is I believe. And what the whole Piscean era brought was religion. And during that time, all the churches have been built. I mean, look at the center of any city anywhere throughout Europe is the church. That's what it was all built on, the belief in religion. And when we move into the age of Aquarius, that the saying for Aquarius is I know. And it's like we're coming into this technologically advanced era where we know things. We don't have to believe and have faith, blind faith anymore in anything. We will know. And that is really powerful. We know how to really create and manifest things in this world. And we got a handle on how this is done. Mankind becomes not so, if I could say blind, but realized. And Aquarius is the sign of humanity. It's humanitarian. So even though Aquarius can be a bit of a detached sign in a way, it becomes more intelligent and more knowing, there's no more fear. Well, I'm not going to say that there's always going to be fear pretty much on this level of existence, but we won't be as fear-based because we have the tools that we need that help us evolve much better. So Aquarius, the age of Aquarius is definitely going to be so much better.
That's so interesting. Just to sort of, I can't help but ask the question, what would Capricorn embody after that, in your opinion?
Well, Capricorn is so interesting because most people think of Capricorn as, the social climber, the goat climbing the mountain to get to the top. And Capricorn is all about government, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So it's very grounded. It's an earth sign. But let me say this about Capricorn. The real symbol for Capricorn is a sea goat. Have you ever seen it where it's a goat and the other end of it is a fish? So, if you really look at the symbol for Capricorn, it isn't just the goat going up the mountain. It is a goat with a fish's tail. And in Vedic astrology, the symbol for Capricorn is the crocodile. So what does that symbol represent? Something that can live on land and the ocean at the same time. So sea and air. And what that means is the adaptability to be able to function in the spiritual world as well as the materialistic world. And that's truly what Capricorn's about. A lot of the greatest gurus were Capricorns and had a lot of Capricorn energy, because right now, here's the situation. People think, to be spiritual, you can't have money. Right? And that's actually what a lot of the spiritual religious groups taught throughout the years. I mean, I remember the nuns who had to take a vow of poverty. So in order to be spiritual, you couldn't have money. Well, that is not true. And here is my belief, and I know it's the truth, that the divine wants us all to be prosperous and enjoy our life, not to suffer and be in poverty. The riches of this world we all should have. And we don't have to take vows of poverty or anything like that. We all should be wealthy if we come from a place of understanding, not, that it's not spiritual if you have money. So that's the situation that I think the Capricorn energy teaches us, how to manifest and have all the riches that you need and help others and be successful but spiritual at the same time. That's the Capricorn energy that I'm familiar with. Does that make any sense to you?
It totally does. It's very inspiring for where we're going to be 2,000 years from now. Yeah. And for those, just to sort of ground back into the present moment for a moment, we're transitioning from this Pisces to this Aquarius energy, and the transition has happened, but I'm sure it's not, like this and then that. I'm sure it's like a gradual process. Any tips, any advice for day-to-day living in terms of how to navigate this shift, especially if sometimes I feel like those of us walking a conscious path, I don't want to say we have it harder, because we don't. In so many ways, it's an absolute blessing. But also the ray of consciousness, the light, can sort of amplify your present awareness on things, which can, make the perception so much clearer when you are going through your challenges. For some people, is this a challenging time? How could we navigate it, surf it with a bit more grace? Any question? Yeah,
Yes.
question around that.
Here is what I tell everyone, and I know it works because I live by this. Whenever you get into a place of fear, and we will in this next year, I'll be getting into that. Always, always go within and connect to that divine spirit. And when you connect to that, and, I always do my prayers to, I call it Divine Mother. because Divine Mother is like this force of unconditional love. And that's what I feel like the divine is. But I always kind of think of it as Divine Mother. And I go within, and all I say is, help me and protect me. And it's done. You don't have to sit there and meditate for 3 hours or beg or pray. It's done. Here is what I say. When you ask the divine, your prayer is heard, and you have to know it and let it go. I'll tell you a little story. One time when I was a flight attendant, I used to freak out about my kids. I used to think, oh my God, what if, I'd get into this crazy fear thought, like, what if one of them crawled into the pool and drowned while I'm gone and I can't get there because I'm in another city? I would have these panic attacks, right? And I would pray and pray and pray and pray. And one day, that divine force, that Divine Mother said, I heard you, stop it. Ask and your wish is fulfilled, and let it go. And I said, okay, that's it. And all of a sudden, the sense of peace comes over you, and it's done. We doubt too much. We just have to ask and know that the divine is within us and we are one with it. And your prayer is answered, period. That's all it takes, that knowingness. And so it is. I'm telling you, this is what we can do whenever you get into a place of fear and we start freaking out and going into panic attacks. Remember just to ask that divine source, protect and help me. And it's done. Let it go and move on with your life. It's that simple.
Yo! Inspired Soul, just taking out a quick sec to ask you, what are you taking away from today's episode? How's 2024 been for you? What's 2025 looking like, feeling like in your mind, in your heart? Leave that information in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Back to today's episode. I've heard this a few times now through this podcast that, there's law of manifestation and law of attraction teachers, and they teach many times that you can revisit and affirm what you're trying to call in, but it seems to be there's a level of mastery at where it's like set and forget, where it's like just call it in and so it is and it's happened, and then on your merry way you go. And it's almost like you intentionally don't peek back at it again. It's almost like when you cut the cake, don't touch the bottom. It's like, yep, just you've made your cut and done, don't touch the bottom, moving on, sort of thing. And there's a level of mastery that invites in for your ability to manifest, and that you don't have to keep checking the stove. It's like, yep,
it's when you come to that point of knowingness, not like I wish, I hope, I pray. No, and whenever that is the point of manifestation.
It's really interesting because we're using the word knowing, and honestly, it's one of my deepest fascinations at the moment, Joni, because I, as a life coach, people will come in and they'll know that there's something more that they're made for, and they're like, hey, this is what's coming up for me. And everyone differs in what's present for them. But then they'll also be like, why is that calling you, or why is that driving you? What is this thing that's deep down inside? And they're like, look, I can't explain it, but I kind of know it. There's this knowing, and the knowing fascinates me because on some level, knowing mindset stuff, I can say, oh, well, if you just eased your expectations, a lot of your suffering would just be mitigated because your expectations would, dissolve, and so your suffering would dissolve. But the key thing in there is the knowing runs way deeper than that mental sort of suffering. It's actually like this deep soul knowing, and even I've come, maybe you can correct my awareness, but in my awareness, we have intuition, which is we tap into our gut, we feel the intuitive responses and the impulses, but it almost feels like this knowing runs even deeper, like it's the substrate of the being and the soul. And it's one of my deepest fascinations. You've used the word knowing a few times. You've mentioned that the age of Aquarius is also shifting from believing to this, I want to use the word embodied knowing, but knowing. And it does, I can't help but feel into the collective conversation at the moment in society that we're talking about this crisis of meaning that we're also going through. Is there a correlation between all of that? And I don't want to say how successful my life coaching business has become, touch wood, but do you know what I mean? That sounded a bit flippant, so pardon for that. But do you know what I mean? People are going through a crisis of meaning. And there is this time when knowing is coming to the forefront, and potentially this is where we're like finally trying to click deeper into knowing.
Yes, I mean, that is the epitome of the age of Aquarius, the knowing. And that's where we will all eventually evolve to. Now, like I said, we've got about 340 years left of the age of Pisces. So we're still kind of in that. We have to come from a place of unknowing, and you got to have belief. But the word belief isn't complete. It's not no. Belief is like, I believe in this, but do I really believe in it? Sometimes I want to believe, but belief isn't there yet. It's not to the knowing. And I believe that we're all, well, here I go, I believe, but I know we're all going towards this. We are all going towards this point of where we become more connected to where we don't need to, we have the trust. We know it's going to happen. The trust is there. So it's like a knowing of trusting, and that makes things happen. Whenever you know something, that's when it happens, not when you pray and wish and dream and hope. Hope isn't there. Knowing is there, to know that this will happen. And it does. So, but my whole quest in this world is, I feel like, really to get back to what I know and what my quest is. I want to make astrology mainstream where everyone is using it, because this tool is to help everyone get to the place where they are the best being that they've come here to be. And this is what I know, that astrology can do this for everyone on planet Earth. And everyone can use this tool. It's not that difficult. I think a lot of people say, do I have to know math to do astrology? It's like, no, we have all these computer programs that do it all for us now. So it is actually, and here's another thing I say, back in the 70s, yeah, I've been around for a long time. Back in the 70s, I used to do yoga, and people would go, that is so weird. Yoga? You can imagine back in the 70s, nobody knew what yoga really was. And I was practicing the hatha yoga and the exercises, and people thought I was a freak. Today, it's on every corner of every shopping center. I'm like, it's mainstream. My wish is that astrology could be mainstream from this point on. That is really what I think would help uplift consciousness on the planet, to be aware of the energy and the vibration of all the planets and how they affect everything and everyone. I know this is what is going to bring humanity to a higher understanding, to know this vibrational frequency of the planets and how you can use them for betterment in every way of your life. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I can see myself making important business decisions when opportunities are present. I can see myself not pushing myself too hard when, I know the teachings are, coming through thick and thin, faster, thick and fast, I should say, So I think, yeah, the actual practical side of it is very valuable in this conversation, this particular moment. I wanted to ask, because you've done like, it kind of gets a little bit eerie. Like, you predicted Trump's assassination within like a 3-day radius of when it was going to happen in 2024. Yeah, maybe you can give us some insights on some pretty trippy sort of unsort of seen predictions that you had as of this year that has just gone, or even just some ones that stand out to you notably. But then also my next question is going to be, what do you foresee coming forward for 2025? I'm asking 2 questions at once, but maybe we can wrap it all into one. I invite you to share. Yeah.
I'd love to. Everyone wants to know what the future holds for us. And of course, as I said before, not everything will be 100% because of the free will. But because of the the way things are set into motion with the planets and everything. It's hard to stop a ball from rolling 100 miles an hour, right? So that's like the motion and the frequency. So yes, based on, and what I do is when I make predictions for countries or the world, I base it on the world leaders and the charts for countries. So it's like when a country was founded, it has a chart too, just like a person. And so by looking at all of the charts for countries, the charts of their leaders, I can make predictions for the world, and especially like the manifestation of where the planets are in the sky, where they are evolving, such as like I talked about the 60s. Well, we've got some things coming up in 2025 that will depict some amazing changes, and I'll get to that. But looking at Donald Trump's chart, he had a specific aspect, and the aspect was, for those that know a little bit of astrology, was where Mars came together with Uranus in the sky. They conjoined. Mars is energy, right? Uranus is sudden, unexpected events, and Mars is violence. And it hit Donald Trump's highest point in his chart, which is called the midheaven. And that is when you're out publicly, it deals with your career. It's a very personal point in a chart. And they hit, and they were there for 3 days. And it was exactly the day that he was almost assassinated. So I had done some videos prior, and I put out in my newsletter that this would happen within this time frame, and it did. And I also put out in many videos, you can see on my YouTube channel, by the way, my YouTube channel is my name, but I put out, you can go back and look, that Donald Trump would win the presidency. This is all in an order of events of things that need to happen. And what's happening throughout history, really historically, is our media leads us to believe certain things. And after COVID happened, you're well aware that the media is not necessarily telling us the truth all the time. So, and I was predicting and I even predicted COVID before it happened. Talk about a prediction in my book. You know, as a matter of fact, I've been working on something with this book, but this book I wrote in 2017, Rahu and Ketu. Remember, I said they represent destiny. As they go through the signs, they have a cycle of 18 and a half years where for them to go through all 12 signs, they stay in a sign for 18 months, a year and a half, but they're exactly opposite. And they stay in a sign for 18 months. But to go through all 12 of the signs, it takes 18 and a half years, exactly. So I found that whenever they were in a particular sign, that devastating, catastrophic things always happened. And I thought, and how did I start with this? I started with September 11th, 2001, when Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius. And I was studying the charts. What made this happen? And actually it was the signs, every time they go in these signs, and Ketu was triggered by Mars and Jupiter was with Rahu. That happened on September 11th, 2001. So I thought, let me go back to the last time they were there, 18 and a half years prior. And that took me to 1982. And I had to sit there and think a little bit, what happened then? The AIDS virus came out, and that paralyzed the country and the world because no one knew what caused it or what it was all about, major fear. And so I said, okay, let me go back 18 and a half years from that. 1963, Kennedy was assassinated. I thought that changed the world forever again. Then I said, okay, another time, 1945, bombing of Hiroshima. And every time, if you go back, there was something catastrophic that happened. So I'm sitting here years later after the 9/11 event, and I see them coming into Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sagittarius. And they came together with Mars and all the typical aspects again. And this was the beginning of 2020. Actually, they came into those signs in 2019, but when they were triggered by Mars, it was actually January, February of 2020. What happened? COVID. And the reason why I'm showing you this book is I wrote it in 2017, and I said, this will be the time something catastrophic will happen that will change the world forever. And it did. So guess what I did? I just completed a new book. It's being edited right now. And I based it on when Rahu and Ketu go back into Gemini and Sagittarius. That year will be 2038. Another catastrophic event will occur. But I went through all of the signs that Rahu and Ketu could go through, each and every one, and what happened historically, and what my predictions are, all the way from the year of 2024 through the year of 2041. That's an 18.5-year cycle. So this is how I make some of my predictions based on where these planets, these points in space are traveling in accordance to the signs and when they come together with planets. This is how we make our world predictions. So if you like, I can go into what I'm seeing for 2025. Would you like that?
I would love that. What have we got in store for us?
Okay, so 2025, what do we have to look forward to? I've got a lot to talk about this year because looking at around March and April, there is going to be a configuration of where about 8 planets come together. And when they come together, this is a huge triggering event. I think there's going to be some big event that's going to be possibly even involving war. But what I get around the time of March through May, there can be some more assassination attempts, because what happens in that window of time, it's actually March 29th through May 29th, that Saturn and Rahu will come together. And they're going to come together with Neptune as well. And Saturn deals with reality, the truth, right? Neptune deals with deception and illusion and secrets. So when you put them together, it's like a realization of the reality of the secrets or the deception that's been going on. So truth is going to come out big time. All of the lies, I think, that we've been discussing about how, the governments around the world, the media, how it's all controlled and what they're trying to tell us. People are waking up to the media today. They're not believing everything they're being told anymore. And let me just say this, way back in the day of Hitler, did you know that Hitler controlled the media and all the movies in Germany? Everything that the German people heard were what Hitler wanted them to hear. And that's been happening ever since in the world. I always want to go back to Kennedy because, by the way, not to diverse a little bit backwards, but what got me so into astrology was the fact that I live in Dallas, and in 1963, I'll never forget, on my black and white TV, this lady came on and begged Kennedy not to come to Dallas. And of course, I was really, really young, probably first grade or so. But the next day he came to Dallas, and we know what happened. And my mother was there. That's why this was like groundbreaking for me. It was such a horrible time historically, but I always wondered, how did that woman know? She was an astrologer and a psychic. Her name was Jean Dixon. So, but from all of my studies with politics and leaders and their charts, I came to discover Kennedy was not killed by a Lone Ranger. What I discovered was it was our government. And not only just the government, but actually the vice president at the time was involved in the assassination of Kennedy, which was LBJ. I know, people say, "Oh, Joni, don't say all that. You could get in trouble." All these people are dead today. That's why I figure no one cares anymore. But my point is, going to the future, is how corrupt the governments are. They suppressed the truth about the Kennedy assassination all these years. And let me just say, they're more corrupt today. But my point is, what's going to be happening in 2025 is the truth comes out about all the corruption and the lies that have been going on. All of these, how they've been controlling our minds. That's the Neptune and the Saturn conjunction with Rahu coming up by the time of that window of time between March 29th through May 29th, those 2 months. And furthermore, when I went back to 1968, now as an astrologer, what we do is we look at these configurations and we go back historically and say, what happened before? Just like I did to predict COVID. That's what the research an astrologer must do. So I went back, and Saturn Rahu come together about every 11 or 12 years. But the last time they were in the sign of Pisces was 1968. I went back and researched it. That was the year of assassinations. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and three months later, Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, was assassinated. So this window of time is very dangerous for Donald Trump. And believe it or not, those same planets that caused his near assassination will come back and forth throughout the year of 2025. As a matter of fact, Saturn's going to be aspecting the midheaven where Uranus is going to be. Instead of Mars, it's Saturn. And actually, I went through the book of Joan Quigley. You probably don't know who she was, but she was President Reagan's astrologer. I went through her book. Yes, Reagan had an astrologer. Nancy Reagan hired an astrologer to protect her husband. Because there's this theory that every time we had a year that was on, the beginning of a year, like 1960, 1980, 2000, every 20 years on that year, there was an assassination all the way up to the time that Reagan was president, 1980. And he was almost assassinated. He almost died in the hospital from a gunshot. Anyway, to make a long story short about Joan Quigley, she said that to have a president assassinated, you need a Saturn and you need a Uranus aspect. Saturn and Uranus will be aspecting Trump's midheaven. And it's the Saturn third full aspect and Uranus conjuncting it again. So that is a treacherous time period. Does it have to happen? No, but it could. So this is where the help of an astrologer is definitely needed, but to know these specific times to avert problems. That's what got me into this initially, because I wondered, what if Kennedy listened to Gene Dixon? Could that been averted? This is where I go all the time with the study of astrology and why I think it's so powerful to help prevent these kind of catastrophic events. And I believe it can if we have using this tool. So going back to what else is going to be happening in this year. So throughout the summer months, June through August, Neptune and Saturn are exactly conjunct. And they are at this degree point where there's going to be treacherous things happening. And let me just say, there is the force of the negative and the positive. If you want to call it evil and good, you can. But there's always that duality here on Earth. So don't think things are just going to be so wonderful and, we're not going to go back. No, there's this force that is always opposing. So we're going to see so much happening in the months, the summer months, that are going to expose the truth, but the opposite side is going to be so resistant to it coming out that there's going to be all sort of catastrophic events. And yes, assassination attempts and probably all sorts of protest and fighting. And I do think, actually, I saw some things. As a matter of fact, if I could plug this really quick, I have a prediction day coming up where I do my world predictions, and it's all day, and it's the December 14th. It's a Saturday. It's probably a Sunday for you guys in Australia. Yes. But regardless, I go through the entire year and make these predictions in detail. But what I discovered is that once we go through this really turbulent time in the spring and the summer, we're coming to a point in October that is like a massive healing because of all the revelations of the truth that comes out. You're going to find that by the time Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer, it's its sign of exaltation. And Jupiter will station at 0 degrees of Cancer from October through the first week of December. And this is where enlightenment, the light comes through, and we're going to see everything for what it really is. And most of all, an amazing healing is coming this year. And I want to say 2026 is going to be a golden year. And here's some things you have to look forward to, everyone. The housing market, things are going to revert back to where people are going to be able to afford a house, and the prices of everything are going to go down. 2026 is going to be a golden year. Jupiter will be in Cancer. And I went back historically, whenever it went in Cancer before, it was amazing. The economy was on, great. People could afford things. People were happy. Now, of course, this is a small window in time, but we have this to look forward to. So in other words, we got to go through this dark tunnel and the fire to get to these revelations of what this is going to bring, which is going to be a beautiful time for everyone. And people are going to be healed. And another thing is, I think there's going to be a lot of healing going on in the area of health, especially with our foods. And you guys don't have the problems, I think, that we have here in the United States, but it's happening all over the world where everything's getting polluted with pesticides and, all sorts of chemicals and drugs. It's crazy.
It's the same
what's
here.
happening. But it's all coming to conscious awareness. And we're going to start into this golden period of healing the economy and the foods. People become more aware and higher minded. There is an evolution of consciousness coming this year, but it's going to take half of the year is going to be hell. The second half of the year, that's where we're going to see the light. And I think 2016, I look forward to that year, and it's a blessed year, but we're going to go through a healing, which we have to. In other words, kind of a purging, if I could say, to get to where we're going. And the whole reason why I brought up the whole Kennedy stuff is that all the corruption and the lies and the governments, this is global. This isn't just the United States. It's all happening, and we become global. Isn't this cool that I can talk to you and we're in different continents across the world? What an amazing thing. This world has become one. We know what's going on everywhere all at once. And so this healing comes together all at once. I'm telling you, this will be a great awakening. So that's my predictions in a nutshell for 2025.
It's really interesting to hear, and I'm really inspired for 2026. And it's interesting watching how, yeah, it's almost like a breath in and a breath out is kind of what I'm hearing as well. You know, there's an opportunity for us to come to breathe, but we're also in the middle of an exhale in some degree. So 2025 still, you know, quite a few things that are breathing out before we take a nice, big, long, deep breath in coming 2026. Interestingly as well, you've mentioned that at different times, different things are at the fore. And like you said, these certain conjunctions also have these significant sociological, like societal impacts. Like obviously the assassination of leaders has a trickle down effect, but you're also, one of your fascinations is extraterrestrial activity. I'd love to get your thoughts on what that actually means to you, because I'm still not sure where my head's at with all of that. But it does fascinate me that, you know, there's only a certain visible spectrum that we as humans occupy, and what goes on beyond those spectrums is definitely one of my fascinations, touch wood. But the key thing in there is also now it seems like there's more and more information being released about extraterrestrial activity at this particular time. So that knowledge is actually becoming less locked down and caged. Does that, astrologically, is stuff going on for that to becoming more to the fore?
Absolutely. You know, really, humankind has not been ready for this yet because, you know, the government has suppressed it because they didn't think the people could handle it. And they're probably right. You know, I mean, if you would have brought a spaceship down, you know, probably 30 years ago, what would people do but probably shoot at it with a gun? This is how high-minded our level of consciousness is. So, but we're getting there. And of course there's, you know, aliens or extraterrestrials. That's a better word for them, actually. But of course they're there. And I believe they're here to help us. And I believe they have been helping us, especially with how we use space travel and how we, you know, anything to do with inventions. They're here to help us. Believe me, this has to be true because they could have destroyed us a long time ago. And isn't it interesting that every time we play around with atomic energy, nuclear energy, they show up and put it out? That they started coming to the planet around the time of World War II, heavily. Remember the Roswell incident that happened in New Mexico, the crash of the alien craft was right after World War II, because they're trying to see what we know and try to put a handle on this, because when you mess with nuclear energy, it messes with the whole universe. This is, you know, this is a proof of how energy, you know, is universal. So there has been factual things where, you know, they have come and extinguished some of the experiments that they've been working with when they work with nuclear energy. So here's my thing, looking astrologically, where Saturn is right now, it represents an opening for extraterrestrial life to be exposed to humankind. They're already in contact, I believe, with some of the governments. Now, it's going to be revealed, and especially with, I think, Donald Trump and Kennedy and Elon Musk. Elon has to know about this. But here's the thing that I don't understand, but I'm not a scientist, so I'm an astrologer, why they don't start working with propulsion energy, because to use fire that, you know, in fuel isn't as advanced as the extraterrestrials, because, you know, their spaceships don't make any noise, and the way that they move is not by, you know, fire or, you know, fuel. It's through propulsion. And I believe where the planets are, well, I don't believe, I know. Let me correct that right now. I know where the planets are and where they're headed, especially Saturn in the last degrees of Aquarius. While it's here between now through March 29th, we will have something more tangible with alien life, because it's in the section of the zodiac. This nakshatra is called Shatabishak. That nakshatra And in Indian astrology, boy, that we could talk for hours, but I'm not going to go into all the details of the 27 nakshatras.
We're gonna have to
But
get back
simply-
on in the future.
I know,
But
I
yeah, the
know. But what a
nakshatras.
nakshatra is, just briefly, is it is a portion of the zodiac. It's a smaller portion of the zodiac that is comprised of 13 degrees, 20 minutes. And if you take the whole 360-degree zodiac and you divide it up, there's 27 nakshatras. But their meanings are derived from the stars in those portions of the zodiac. So Shatterbishak is this portion of the zodiac that deals with the sky watcher, and it deals with aliens and things of this nature. So while Saturn is transiting slowly through this portion of the zodiac for between now and practically not quite, but till the end of March, we will have more contact with aliens, alien life. It's coming. And I know for a fact that by probably the year of 2026, this is where technology is going to take off. That's something I forgot to mention. Technology is going to come to new heights and new levels. And why do I think that is? Because I think aliens are helping us in some way progress, because there are other ways that we can travel. And I think it is propulsion. I think cars and even the way that airplanes are going to transit. As I said, I wrote a book recently that takes us all the way to the year of 2041. And by that time, we will be traveling in completely different ways. It'll be quicker, more efficient, not as dirty. And it is through the help of aliens helping us understand what works with the scientist. And I don't know if a lot of people will accept this. In other words, yes, it's going to come out, but some people choose not to believe it because they're scared of it. But there's nothing to be afraid of. They have they say there's different groups from different places in the universe, but they could have all destroyed us by now. They're so much more technologically advanced. They want to help us, because if you are more evolved, then you're not going to be so ignorant as to try to destroy everyone and kill people through war. They're past that. And heaven forbid, when are we ever going to get past that? To me, it is so insane to kill another human being. Why is that still relevant on the level of consciousness on this planet? But it is. We still have war, but we're going to evolve eventually. And I think with the help of alien intelligence, it'll get us there. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think this year is going to be monumental with discoveries, 2025, that is, as well as 2026. We will really have connection. But like I said, some people are too afraid to really admit it, but it will be out there if they want to accept it.
The future of medicine as well, you've cast some thoughts and some predictions into that. And you mentioned earlier this whole, it seems like the Nikola Tesla energy, vibration, like things are going through a shift at the moment. Yeah, your insights on potentially where you think medicine and healing in particular, healing, I should probably say.
Okay. I
Yeah.
love that you asked me that, because I have real strong feelings on this. As a matter of fact, I know where it's going because of where the planets are, particularly when Rahu goes into Aquarius, where it's going to enter into Aquarius the end of May of 2025, and it will be there for 18 months. And while it is there, it's going to promote healing. And here is the essence of healing. The way that we use healing with drugs and medicines, that's going to be old school eventually, because the way of healing is really through vibration and energy. If you can change the frequency that someone vibrates at, you will change their health. You will shift disease. Now, this is something that I think we're on the cutting edge of right now. We're on the tip of the iceberg, but this is where it's all going to go. This is the beginning of a new way of healing. Now, the drug companies don't want this to come out. Let me just say that, because these are not billion-dollar companies. They're essentially trillion-dollar companies, right? And they like their money. And you know, when they say people are the richest person in the world, these people aren't even put in that category, the people that make all these trillions. And but my point is, this is why it hasn't come out yet. It's been suppressed because of the greed of some of these organizations. And, you know, I probably shouldn't say this, I'll get in trouble saying all this, but it's true. We're on the cusp of a new trend of healing that deals with vibration and energy. And it's like, if you've ever heard of the Rife machine, Royal Rife many years ago came up with changing vibrational frequency in the cells. And when they did, the diseased tissue that might have been cancerous, and they changed that vibrational frequency, the cancer dissolved. And so wouldn't it be amazing if we had these more advanced tools that change the frequency of not only where the disease is, but also in the mind and throughout the body? Because let me say, you know as well as I do, disease starts with the emotions and the mind, you know, where people have trauma, and we all have trauma throughout our lives. That trauma is in our cells, and it starts with disease. And yes, there can be even things in the environment that cause it, but still, all in all, there is this frequency that if we shifted the frequency of our mind, that would begin the biggest healing of mankind. Why? Because think of all the mental diseases. Everyone is affected by someone with mental disease. And let me just say, addictions is a mental disease. And what if we could cure addictions? What if we could cure schizophrenia, depression, all of these mental diseases? This is what plagues humanity. And this is one of the causes of disease. And I believe working with vibration and changing frequency within the body, and particularly the mind, this will be the biggest healing ever. And it's all about to begin.
For those that want to integrate more of this awareness in their day-to-day life, it sounds challenging, but you've found a way to make it super simple for people to access. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Galactic Planner?
About what? The collective?
The Galactic Planner.
Oh, the Galactic Planner. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you asked me, because this is something I just started. Remember how I told you I want to make astrology mainstream where everyone can use it. It's accessible to everyone. Now, yes, I teach people how to do astrology. I have a whole school, by the way, I have to mention that, called the University of Vedic Astrology. It's all online. And I have students all over the world. As a matter of fact, some of my graduates live in Australia and New Zealand. And but going back to the planner, so I teach people how to do astrology, but you know, a lot of people don't want to be astrologers, so they want to have access to the planets personally every day, right? And not everybody can go to an astrologer, a professional. So I created the Galactic Planner for everyone to be able to use. And it was quite a feat, because let me tell you, I had to sit down and write what every transit and aspect could mean. And this is thousands and thousands of write-up, but I did it. Nothing on the Galactic Planner is AI. It's what I wrote. And some of my students who I trained are helping me now write it. But here's what it is essentially. It takes your chart, and calculates all your planets so in other words, your Vedic sidereal chart, and it plugs in where the planets are in the sky. So your transiting planets, how they affect you personally to your chart, and what it does with those predictions, which I wrote all the translations. It gives you all of those daily aspects and delivers it into your calendar on your phone or your computer. So when you open up your calendar every day, you know what's happening astrologically to your birth chart personally, not just what's going on in the cosmos, what is going on, how it affects you personally. And so, Amrit, can I tell you a little quick story about how I started the
Please.
planner?
Yeah, I am in awe. I'm in awe of the fact that it plugs into your Gmail, because I live out of my calendar in so many ways, and just being able to like have these bits of information
Yes.
would be so is it's so cool. But yeah, please tell us how you came
Okay,
to
so
this concept.
here's how it all began. So as I told you, I have 3 sons, and I always say this, my University of Vedic Astrology is one of my greatest accomplishments in my life, except for my 3 sons. I always want to make that clear. They are amazing. But my youngest son, they all were introduced to astrology at a very young age. But my youngest son, throughout the years, he would always say, okay, Mom, tell me what's in my chart. And I'd sit down and I'd give him a reading for about 3 to 6 months. But every time it ran out of aspects, he'd come back, okay, I'm out of aspects. Give me what's going to be happening month and day to day. So I would tell him, and he'd type it all in his phone, right, for each day. And one time I said, okay, Austin, you are going to meet the girl you're going to marry on this day. And he goes, Mom, I don't care about that. I want to get my career off the ground. He just graduated from college. And he says, I don't care about relationships. I said, I don't care. This is going to happen on this day. Okay. That day comes, and guess what? He's at a party and meets this girl that it had to be love at first sight. So towards the end of the evening, they were talking nonstop the whole evening, and he tells her, my mom told me I was going to meet you today. And my mom's an astrologer, and she said, I'm going to meet you today. And he shows her the phone, and I cannot believe she didn't run away.
She's definitely a keeper.
And they ended up getting married. Now, this is a true story. And so years later, he says, Mom, what if we wrote this so everyone could have this in their phone and be prepared every day? And I said, that is brilliant. Boy, is that going to be a feat for me to handle. But guess what? I did it. I sat down and wrote all of these translations, and now it is the Galactic Planner. And I want everyone to try it. It's amazing. When you try this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And it does your chart. You'll have a copy of your chart as well. But every day in your calendar, it's going to give you every prediction you need to know. So
if we came up with a little code like inspired for the audience tuning in, do you reckon they could get a copy of the planner? Yeah, I'll put a link to the planner in the show notes below, but you reckon we could come up with a little code?
yeah, so everyone out there, guess what? You get to try it. Try this code. See if you like it. And I know you will, because this is my way of bringing my mission of this lifetime into fruition, making astrology mainstream. Okay. This is how everyone's going to have access and be able to use it every day of their life. And let me just say, I've heard a lot of people say they've avoided accidents. They had opportunities they took advantage of. I get things all the time from people saying how it's helped them. And that is so rewarding in and of itself, to hear how much this tool has really and truly helped people day in to day out in their personal lives. It's amazing.
Joni, I don't even know where to thank you from. I'm really excited for the app plugging into my Google account. Thank you so much for your generosity and helping so many people access profound wisdom. And like you said, I love your approach to it, just the it's a betterment tool for your life, and yeah, your own journey, and how you've then also tried to make it as accessible as possible for people. But then also, I know we didn't quite get into this, but you know, your ambitions with the school as well, and the university, and helping people, you know, ultimately become even better astrologers than yourself, which is so inspiring as a vision. Just everything you're doing for the space of Vedic astrology and sharing its wisdom for all of us. I thank you for your time and energy here today, but also thank you so much for everything that you're doing out there in the world at large. Really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And the more people I can get all this information out to, the better. So thank you so much for your generosity and your time and willingness to educate the world about what astrology is about. I appreciate you. Thank you.
You inspired soul. Thank you so much for making it through to the end of another incredible episode. Joni and her journey toward Vedic astrology, and just how effortlessly she just shares so much so abundantly, is such a gift and a blessing. Thank you so much for tuning in all the way through to the end. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this incredible inspired path by your side. Now, just on screen in a couple of moments, I'm going to put on an episode with Pam Gregory for you to click into, and another couple of episodes that could really support you on your journey weaving into 2025 and diving deeper into astrology and astrological awareness for you to live a better life. As always, just in taking a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers. Touch wood, my mind cannot wrap its head around it, let alone my heart feeling into that. But genuinely, thank you so much for your incredible blessings, supporting this channel onwards and upwards and inwards. My God, it is such a pleasure and an honor. I'm just, touch wood, so grateful. So thank you for your blessings. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed but are considering doing so, please do take a moment, hit the subscribe button just below. It's lighting up in the colors of the inspired evolution as I'm saying the word subscribe. And yeah, just hit that bell notification icon. 2 episodes like this come out every week. Now on screen for you, an opportunity to dive deeper into astrology with Pam Gregory. Also other episodes for you to deepen your awareness of what's potentially coming up in 2025. Take your pick, make your click. I will see you in the next one. Stay inspired. Keep evolving. Go on. See you soon.